I teach the unrelating of everything. What I do is more related to television programming than to making a scheme of order. In a world where home is only a ghost, because both parents work, or because too many moves, or too many job changes, or too much ambition, or something else has left everybody too confused to stay in a family relation, I teach you how to accept confusion as your destiny. The second lesson I teach is your class position. If I do my job well, the kids can't even imagine themselves somewhere else because I've shown them how to envy and fear the better classes and how to have contempt for the dumb classes. That's the real lesson of any rigged competition, like school. You come to know your place. The third lesson I teach is indifference. When I'm at my best, I plan lessons very carefully to produce a show of enthusiasm. But when the bell rings, I insist we drop whatever it is we have been doing and proceed quickly to the next workstation. The lesson of bells is that no work is worth finishing. So why care too deeply about anything? The fourth lesson I teach is emotional dependency. By stars and red checks, smiles and frowns, prizes, honors, and disgraces, I teach you to surrender your will to the predestinated chain of command. Sometimes free will appears right in front of me in pockets of children angry, depressed, or happy about things outside my ken. Rights in such matters cannot be recognized by school teachers, only privileges, which can be withdrawn, hostages to good behavior. The fifth lesson I teach is intellectual dependency. Good people wait for an expert to tell them what to do. It is hardly an exaggeration to say our entire economy depends on this lesson being learned. Think of what might fall apart if children weren't trained to be dependent. The social services businesses could hardly survive. Counselors and therapists would look on in horror as the supply of psychic invalids vanished. Commercial entertainment of all sorts, including television, would wither as people learned again how to make their own fun. Restaurants, prepared food warehouses, and a whole host of other assorted food services would be drastically downsized if people returned to making their own meals rather than depending on strangers to plant, pick, chop, and cook for them. Much of modern law, medicine, and engineering would go too, the clothing business and school teaching as well, unless a guaranteed supply of helpless people poured out of our schools each year. Don't be too quick to vote for school reform if you want to continue getting a paycheck. We've built a way of life that depends on people doing what they are told because they don't know how to tell themselves what to do. It's one of the biggest lessons I teach. For God's sake, don't rock that boat. These are the lessons which veteran New York City teacher John Taylor Gatto says comprise the real curriculum we offer our children, whether rich or poor. The sixth lesson I teach is provisional self-esteem. The lesson of report cards, grades, and tests is that children should not trust themselves or their parents, but should rely on the evaluation of certified officials. Self-evaluation, the staple of every major philosophical system that ever appeared on the planet, is never a factor in these things. People must be told what they are worth. The seventh lesson I teach is that you can't hide. The meaning of constant surveillance and denial of privacy is that no one can be trusted, that privacy is not legitimate. Children must be closely watched if you want a society under tight central control. Children will follow a private drummer if you can't get them into a uniformed marching band. School as it was built is an essential support system for a vision of social engineering that condemns most people to be subordinate stones in a pyramid that narrows as it ascends to a terminal of control. Schools teach exactly what they are intended to teach, and they do it well: how to be a good Egyptian and where your place is in the pyramid. John Taylor Gatto has befriended hundreds of young people in his 26 years of teaching in New York City schools. His trust in them and his wisdom inspired them beyond the reach of classroom bells.
I had another girl who had a problem of negotiation with her own mother. The girl thought she was ready to take long exploratory journeys, and her mother used what the girl thought was the manipulative technique of saying, if you can earn the money to do it, you can go. And what was at stake at this one juncture was the girl going to Paris alone. She was 13 or 14 also. Of course, the amount of money was vast that was required to do that. And I said, don't look at it as a contest between you and your mother. I said, look at it as a tremendous contest between you and your ability to become useful enough, even at your age, to somebody else in New York City, that they'll give you that money in exchange for your service. And what the girl eventually ended up doing, I was just bowled over by this, because I never would have dreamed of it in 40 lifetimes. There are a great many old people's homes on the west side of Manhattan between Columbia and Lincoln Center. And she went around and began to act as an agent for elderly women who could knit sweaters and make socks and all one-of-a-kind things and all very skilled craftsmanship. She assembled this stuff, and then she sold it between Columbia University and Barnard College. It was only a few blocks from the school. The permit was very easy to obtain and very low cost, and in any case, I told her that because of her age, she'd have an unfair advantage since nobody would even question her, and that did happen. She set up many engaging relationships that I think she still maintains.
School teacher John Taylor Gatto goes on to tell his audience in Toledo, I met a wonderful old woman, age 87, in Toledo yesterday, Mrs. Virginia Stranahan, who teaches people about nature and flowers and pottery and making honey by a method that was just like my grandfather's. Virginia says, I teach people by getting out of their way. Gatto discovered, he says, that teaching is not an art like painting at all, whereby the addition of material to a surface, an image is synthetically produced, but much more an art like sculpture, where by the subtraction of material, an image already locked in the stone is enabled to emerge. In Mrs. Stranahan's words, you get the useless material out of the way of the image you're trying to produce, which is, of course, the very best human being the student is trying to become. I began to experiment with ways to remove obstacles preventing the inherent genius of children from gathering. I began to devise guerrilla exercises to allow the kids access to the raw materials people have always used to educate themselves: free choice, private time, a relief from constant surveillance and judgment, a broad range of human associations, and a pat on the back when it was needed.
I look at a little newspaper I used to put out so that the kids would see what they had done, and I'm looking here at a 13-year-old boy holding a slice of pizza above his mouth, and I believe the boy's in Duke University Law School now. This paper's 10 years old, but he had made the mistake as a young black kid of going to a pizza parlor that services the collegiate school, one of the aristocratic private schools in the United States, the one that John Kennedy's kid went to. And of course, the owner of the pizza parlor was terrified that might cost him the business that came from collegiate. So the guy appropriated this kid's pizza and his soda and threw them out on the charge that the boy had taken 5 straws. And I remember, as though it was yesterday, the outrage to which he came to me and asked me what I was going to do about it. Our school's about 3 blocks from the pizza parlor and about 4 blocks from collegiate. And I said, I'm not going to do anything. I said, but there's a lot you can do. And the first thing you can do is just man to man or human being to human being. You can go over there and tell the fellow when it's a quiet time that he was way out of line, but that you'll overlook it because you realize he's under pressure.